I'm broken physically, and because of my disability, I use multiple adaptations to help me access my PC. So I think it's time that I actually go through some of the hardware that I use. These are my mouse, my keyboard, my and some bonus content, which is going to look at devices that I use that help me create content. Oh yes, I'm an evil editor. I'm making you watch the whole video to find out what those bleeped out devices are. The mouse I use is a Logitech G502 Lightspeed. The way I use this mouse is by resting it in my palm of my hand and pushing it around my desk, not gripping it like most people normally would. This is because I don't have the hand dexterity to grip and hold onto the mouse. This is where the Bluetooth functionality that comes with the G502 is perfect for me. As what I find sometimes with wired mice, when I'm pushing it around my desk in the palm of my hand, it sometimes gets tangled up. And because I can't grip the mouse and lift it up, I struggle then picking it up and untangling the wires. So one thing you will find in most of my setup, if there's an option for it to be Bluetooth, I will take up that option. However, the main reason I chose this device is the extra buttons you have on the left side of the mouse. All in all, I think there's about 13 buttons. I might be wrong though, but these buttons on the left hand side of the mouse help me a huge amount. That's because I really struggle to right click on the mouse without taking my hand off the mouse. So obviously in clutch moments when you're gaming, that's quite difficult to do. So the fact that this mouse has loads of programmable buttons that I can reach is a huge win and something I love to take advantage of. But obviously we'll be exploring the software that I use to do this at a later date in upcoming videos. I absolutely adore this mouse and I'd probably use it if I was able-bodied, but also if anybody has any sort of suggestions or ideas that I could use to move my cursor around my screen instead of a mouse, that might be slightly easier for me and not as restrictive, as in when it gets to the edge of the mouse mat, I really sometimes struggle picking it up and moving it back to the center, then please let me know in the comments because I'd love to explore these. Okay, time to look at my keyboard now, which is going to make me look like a real Logitech fanboy. I use the Logitech G915 Lightspeed 10 keyless keyboard. And the keyboard is basically something that gets used between the hours of 8 AM to 4 PM whilst I am working, or after work when I'm writing YouTube scripts such as these. And that's because it has no real place in my gaming setup because my hand dexterity isn't good enough to use it whilst gaming. Hence, I have multiple different adaptations that I have adopted into my gaming setup. But for the case of work and writing YouTube scripts, this keyboard is perfect for me. Again, the Bluetooth means that I don't have wires trailing all over my desk that get in the way of my mouse. The 10 keyless means that it's more compact and doesn't take as much desk space up, which, trust me, when you're disabled with a lot of adaptations, desk space is so important. Okay, now I'm going to tell you something which is quite embarrassing as a reason as to why I got this keyboard, the RGB effects. But wait, hear me out before you all start judging me for choosing a keyboard because of the RGB lights. When I type on my keyboard, I very much type like your typical 5-year-old with one finger at a time. Now, the reason why I do this is because I really struggle touch typing and my dexterity just isn't good enough to be able to feel the keys what I'm typing on. So it's quite a slow process. But one thing I found was that if I use the RGB features that come with the keyboard and color code each key individually, I can type a lot faster because I just look at the colors that my fingers are above, quite quickly glancing at the keyboard, rather than having to stare down at the keyboard and work out which key I am pressing. So it's quite a weird reason as to why I chose this keyboard, but honestly, I would be a bit lost if I didn't have an RGB keyboard, and I do find it helps me type 5 to 10 words quicker. Time for the devices that actually make you want to watch this video. And first, we're going to start off with the most disgusting and grim one that I own, my Sip and Puff device. The Sip and Puff device is basically a tube which I've attached to my wireless headset using Sugru. Oh, and for those wondering, the headset I use is a SteelSeries Arcticus 9, and I've added all the links to the devices that I've used today in my description. This tube goes all the way from my headset to a box underneath my desk, in which there is a pressure sensor which can tell the changes in pressure within the tube. The sensor then, depending on whether there's been an increase in pressure, which is when I blow in the tube, or a decrease in pressure, which is when I suck on the tube, then sends signals to my PC. I then use some software within my PC that then converts that signal into keyboard virtual inputs. But like I mentioned, we'll go on to the software in my next video. This tube then enables me to basically play games and do some key bindings with my breathing, which means my hands don't have as much stress or things to worry about when playing games. Also, I found actually I'm a lot quicker at reacting by blowing into the tube, especially because sometimes my hands do seize up a little bit while playing games. Okay, confession time. The Logitech fanboy has returned. But this time it's for some old school Logitech piece of kit that actually isn't on sale anymore. So I had to chunk out £120 to get this device secondhand. That bad boy is a Logitech G13, also known as a one-handed keyboard. But why did I spend £120? The simple answer is I needed a device that could help me do the movement that you normally would do with WASD comfortably and quickly. In the past, I had used an Xbox controller, which I would plug into my PC and then use software called Joystick Key to then convert right analog joystick movement into WASD. This worked kind of well, apart from in some games, it would recognize the controller input and the keyboard input at the same time. So as I'm moving forward, it would also be looking up at the sky, which isn't great when you're playing FPS games. So I needed a device which would then only be recognized as a keyboard rather than also a controller. So I did a lot of research and stumbled across the Logitech G13, which was the perfect joystick for me and the perfect angle compared to all the other ones, which had seemed to be ergonomically designed for people with, well, normal hands. So yes, I spent over £100 on a device that basically replaced 5 keys I would normally use with a keyboard. The trouble is that the Logitech G13 is no longer being produced, and I'm starting to notice that a few of the buttons on my joystick and my one-handed keyboard are beginning to get a bit faulty. So therefore, I'm in the process of thinking about replacing it with either the Microsoft Adaptive Joystick button or the PlayStation Access controller upon its release. That's if it will also work with PC and not get recognized as a controller. But if PlayStation or Microsoft want to send me one of these devices, nudge, you'll find my contact details in my bio on all my social media platforms. All those devices are the main ones that I use to help me access my PC and game. But before we go on to the bonus content, if you want to subscribe, that way you'll be able to keep an eye out for when we drop the video where I explored the software that brings all this to the next level. Okay, let's talk about a couple of devices that I use that help me create content independently. And shock horror, they are both made by Elgato. The first is my Stream Deck. This is probably, other than my Sip and Puff device, my second favorite device that I have in my whole setup. Mainly just because the amount of millions of options and functions that I can carry out at the press of a button, whether that be starting streams at the press of a button and opening all the applications that I need, turning on lights within my setup, which we'll get onto later, quickly creating clips when I'm streaming that I can turn into YouTube Shorts and TikToks at the push of a button, or also to activate hotkeys whilst editing. All these are so much better for me than the alternative, which would be having to use hotkeys, something which I just don't have the dexterity to do quickly whilst in the middle of a gaming session. So it's much easier for me to quickly hit one of these buttons on my Stream Deck. Now for the second device, which is my Elgato Keylight Airs. I have 2 of these, and you're probably wondering why I've included these in a video about accessibility devices and devices that I use in my gaming setup. Quite simply, it's because their ability to be turned on and off wirelessly. So I can go from this to this at the press of a button and get that perfect lighting that I require for my streaming and recording content. Prior to having the Keylight Airs, I used to really struggle turning on ring lights and would often have to have help. And now that I live with my partner and she's at work most of the time, I would not be able to create as much content as I do at the moment. So in short, what that means for you guys is you get more of me and more content. I don't know if that's a good thing, but you all seem to like it. So I'm taking it as a good thing. Now, before I go, I am always keeping my eye out for cool tech that I can incorporate into my setup. So guys, if you see anything that you think that would look really cool in my setup or something that will make gaming easier for me, please tag me in whatever you see at Woolsey'sDGP or send me on Discord or just comment on this video with what you've found, as I'd really love to keep exploring different kinds of technology that disabled people can use in their gaming setup and just in general life. Anyway guys, remember, I'll see you soon for the video where we look at the software that I use in my gaming setup. Until then, I'll see you soon.